Hello and welcome to It's Personal Stories, the podcast dedicated to empowering personal success. My name is Elliott with It's Personal Stories, and today I'm delighted to have my friend Liz Dahlager, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Merete Hotel Management, with us. Welcome, Liz.
Hello, Lan.
So good to finally have you on.
Yeah,
Now,
well, thank you.
yeah, I've known you a little while, but
Mhm.
I would love if you could share your journey to leadership and what were some of the inflection points in your career. And do you think there is something that was the reason you were so successful?
So I have been in the hotel industry for 25 plus years. Started sales and marketing, and I think for me the big changes were really moving from an on-property to more of a regional or area role on the sales and marketing side, and then from that point, um, moving into the hotel development side. So those were kind of three big shifts: is going from kind of on property sales and marketing to above property, and then saying, okay, how, I didn't want to be a director of sales forever. And so I was like, okay, I've got this down and I figured it out, but I just wasn't sure what the next step was. And that's kind of when I started looking at hotel development and saying, oh, that's kind of interesting. And my skill set on the sales and marketing side was an interesting way to get to that point, but I had very strong opinions about what brands go in what markets, and kind of how to match those, and would talk to operators and developers and kind of question some of their things, and then say, well, I have a different perspective just based on my background of working with hotels from a sales and marketing perspective. So I think that those were pretty significant shifts each time, right? To go on property to above property to and then expanding kind of my scope from selling a hotel to, okay, what supports top line performance at a hotel and why, and how can I take that knowledge and build on it to kind of open up some more opportunities for me from a base from a job perspective, right? From a career perspective. And then you add to that going from an employee to an owner, right? So I'm a part owner in the management company. So that's another shift, right? Is how do you take a sales and marketing background and go, all the way to where you're overseeing a portfolio of hotels and looking at new business development. And for me, that was really another shift just in how I think about things, how I'm approaching things from an owner perspective, etc. So those are pretty big inflection points. I'll just throw that out there. Each one was pretty daunting in some ways, I think, but exciting too, right? I wanted to learn something new. So yeah.
If there was a factor in your success, what do you think that would be?
I think I was always looking for what's next. I was always curious or wanting to be challenged. I didn't like to be doing something I knew really, like, for example, in the sales side, I felt like, okay, like I've done it. I know what I'm doing. I know kind of all the different segments. All the different kind of moving parts. So for me, it was always like, what's next? What can I do? How can I add to whatever I'm doing or contribute in a bigger way would be, maybe a better way to say it. But I always was like, what's next? And I still do that, which at times can be challenging.
But I love the idea of asking for more opportunities or
Mhm.
asking to learn, to grow, and to learn new things. I
Mhm.
wanted to stay on that topic
Mhm.
of curiosity and always looking for what's next and thinking about continuous growth, because
Mhm.
what we've learned from doing this podcast is that a hallmark of great leaders is this curiosity of always wanting to learn new things. And
Mhm.
I'm curious if there is a skill you wish you had learned earlier. And if so, how did you develop it?
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of things I probably wish I would have learned earlier, but an easy one, or one that I often will share with people, is I didn't go to school for business or finance or accounting. Um, Really no business classes when I went to college. And so that was something, I think, had I done that sooner, or got clued into that sooner, um, it would have been helpful, right? So I kind of had to reset my learning when I wanted to kind of expand my my scope of how I work, into that, whether it's P&L review or whether it's talking to an investor. So I really had to, I had to do some work on that, because it wasn't something I kind of already had. So I did. I mean, I read a lot. I took classes, right? I mean, I talked to people, but I really probably read a lot. And then I took the hotel asset management and development class at Cornell. And I mean, that was really, really helpful in understanding kind of the piece that I was missing. So I think, had I learned some of that sooner, and I think our operators now, general managers generally, have, well, not all, but a lot of them have stronger knowledge in that now than they did when I was coming up in the industry. And again, to be blunt, like, I didn't know to ask anyone. I'm sure someone would have told me. But I make it very, I don't pass on that mistake. So it's one of the first things I'm always wanting people to understand and know. And I'm very transparent about it with people now that work with me, but they understand from the beginning, not kind of a few years in, the bigger picture. And then the skills that they'll need to be able to use that information in a way that's productive, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that's
yeah.
amazing for a leader to say, okay, this would have helped me earlier. You need to focus on these things. What do you
Mhm.
usually recommend that they do?
I recommend that they don't limit. So, for example, think of a hotel department manager or a salesperson, right? A hotel sales manager, or coordinator, even. Like, I don't like to limit it even to the managers and say, okay, but this is your piece, but have you looked at all of these pieces, and have you talked to those department heads and learned what their top 3 priorities are and what they're looking at, from a summary P&L financial overview, just the using the language and showing them the impact those things have, I think is I mean, it sounds basic, right? It sounds, well, of course people should be doing that, but not everybody does. It's busy. You get busy. You're like, this is my part. This is what I'm doing. But as soon as we get them exposed to how that impacts other departments, or how other departments have to think about that, first of all, performance improves, right? Because people understand. But I just think it's a piece that we tend to either skip over and assume they already know it, or it's not important. You just do your part. That's good enough. And those are the things I think that don't serve us now, especially with younger workforce, to be blunt.
Yeah. I wanted to highlight 2 threads that I heard you talking about. And one of them is not limiting anybody's potential,
Mhm,
and to say
mhm.
whatever level you're at, it will still benefit you to understand the bigger picture.
Yep.
And then the piece of encouraging people to talk to other departments, learn more about different
Mhm,
areas of where you're
mhm.
working. And we've had a number of leaders on the show who've shared that by being curious and trying to understand all the different areas within
Yes.
their company, it has led to them getting promoted because they were the one that actually understood the greater organization over time.
Yes. Yes. Yes, 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 Lan. Yes.
I wanted to switch to this topic that you and I have talked about, the difference
Mhm.
between influence and authority.
Mhm.
Because a major transition in one's career is when you go from an individual contributor to a manager of people, and hopefully from there to a leader of people. But no one trains you for any of that. They train you how to do your job, but not really how to
Mhm.
manage or lead people. And I say that as being 2 different things.
Mhm.
And it can be really challenging, especially for people who have been very successful as an individual contributor, right? They're a high
Yeah.
performer,
Yep.
individual contributor. Their success has been built by their two hands, everything that they've done themselves. And now they need to learn how to work through other people. Can you talk about this transition and why influence and authority are not the same thing?
Oh, yeah, I mean, that could be, this bias. We could just talk about that probably the whole time. But yes, I think it's a significant challenge, and not unique to our industry, but our industry, I think it sometimes is worse because we have so many doers and executors, right? People come up under hotel operations roles, and they're the doers, and then we give them a regional role or a VP role, and they're used to. I joke with our team that people that do that transition, you were the like kind of king or queen of the kingdom, and everything was great and easy because it was self-contained. When you're managing multiple units or over a larger region, it gets a little more challenging. And so this is something we talk about a lot. And I think, and I dealt with this as well. I thought, oh, I have the title now, so now everyone will just do what I say. Right? That's a fun one. So I think there's a few things I want to say about this. One is, and I tell leaders and new managers this all the time, is you need to be secure in who you are as the leader or manager, that you don't need to prove it, because that isn't your job anymore necessarily, right? Proving by doing. So they get stuck in, well, I'll just do it. I'll take care of it. I'll micromanage it to whatever, result you need it to be in. And it's like, well, I don't want that. I want your team to be able to do it without you doing it, because then I know you're leading or managing them in that way. But that takes some big self-esteem, right? You have to be very secure in yourself to let other people be the doers. And so I talk about that a lot, is I think that's really key, is being secure in yourself as a leader to let other people do. You can coach, you can mentor, you can be curious, you can ask questions. Why, did you think that went well? What would you do differently if you could do it again? What did we learn? What could we have done differently? Why did that work? Why did it work this time and not last time? Whatever that is. But I think talking through those things from a question and curiosity perspective versus a dictatorship, or or just saying, this is the instructions from A to Z every step of the way, right? Saying, hey, here's the goal, here's some guidelines, here's where we're going to check in about it. But letting them be the doer is so key. And I think you get buy-in, you get more trust when you let go. But that's what I see is the biggest problem, specifically in our industry, where we'll just go do it. Right? We can do it. And because we were so good, which is why we're in this new role, we're going to do it really well. But that other person isn't going to think you're a great leader or a great, right? I mean, they're going to be like, okay, well, they're not going to be able to sustain that performance. And then you get burnout and all the things on both sides. So I work on this still. I mean, I work on this every day myself, right? I'm a doer. Most of us in this industry are doers. And so I have to constantly be like, okay, don't do it for them. Ask questions, be curious, and assume. And I think this is another part of that, is assume everybody wants to do a good job. And so that does shift your perspective, I think, from authority to influence, when they're trying to do a good job.
I think just helping them and coaching them.
Yeah.
It's always going to be faster if you do it yourself, but you can't scale if you do that. And it doesn't help the people who work for you to learn. No. And so I think you're right. Having the ability to be confident enough to say, if I help them learn how to do this and they end up doing it even better than me, like, I will look good. And I think you do get points for coaching your people and having your team become high performing. And like you said, be able to do things even without you. So it's really hard, right? When you're it is hard to let go.
And yes. And so I think, like I said, I say that a lot to people. I'm like, you've gotta trust that you will still get credit, right? Because a lot of these, high performers, high achievers, they also, so you'll be like, I see you and you're going to get the credit, but you've got to you've got to let your people and influence your people in such a way that they can do those things without you being the doer. I think that's hard. It's hard.
It's hard. But a critical skill if you're going to continue to move
Yeah.
up, because you can't do everybody's job.
You can't do it. Yeah.
Continue to move up.
Yeah.
Let's
for sure
switch over to mentors and champions, because a lot of people have said this has been a key component for them advancing in their careers. And I'm curious, how important is it to find champions and mentors? How does one go about it? How have they helped your career?
Oh my gosh. I feel like it's a loaded question because you're one of my mentors. And champions, all the things. So I would not be in the role that I'm in, or even in the company that I work with, had it not been for, I've had multiple throughout my career, and amazing people. The general things I want to share really are around, you don't need just one. I think having multiple with different perspectives and different kind of interests, knowledge, whatever that might look like. For me, I have mentors from the sales side that I still talk to, right, that supported me early on. I have people like you that I reached out to back in the day that I was like, hey, I need to learn about hotel finance and development stuff, and I don't understand, but then I have others, that are not in the industry, that are just sounding board and kind of, I won't say life mentors, but kind of, right? And so I think having multiple, and then when you're working with a mentor, I've done formal coaching / mentoring and informal, and I think both have their place and value. But I think understanding the differences and respecting people's time when it's not a paid coaching or mentoring thing is just being respectful, being prepared, right? You don't want the mentor to feel like this is just another thing they have to do. You want to just make sure that it's that you're just respectful of their time, I think. The last thing I'll say is there's a quote. I do a mentorship IRL, I call it, presentation. I've done it a couple times locally for industry gatherings. And it's mentorship in real life. For us older people that don't know it's IRL, right? It's in real life. Because it's such a thing, especially for women in the industry, that mentorship seems like, well, you need a mentor. And they're like, well, do I get one? What do I do? Right. And so I break it down in real life. Like, here's formal, informal. Here's what you can say. Here's how you should act if you ask someone and they say no, which has happened to me. Right. But I love that a mentor, there's a quote, there's lots of, Oprah says something like this too, but it's basically, it's not somebody who walks ahead of you to show you how they did it. It's somebody that walks alongside you to show you what you can do. And that idea of having people that are with you along your journey, whatever that journey is, to just show you what is possible, is like, I think, the best thing. And for me, this firsthand, to have people in my life along the way that just kind of said, hey, have you thought about this? You could do this. And those little nuggets can be life-changing. And for me, they have been. I would, like I said, I wouldn't be an owner at Merete without probably, I can name 3 people that influenced me in that decision. Or opportunity. And that's amazing. So I think there's huge value in both formal and informal mentors, champions, people that have gone down some of the roads before. And that doesn't mean you have to do it the same way, but just have knowledge that you don't have, that you're not going to get in a book.
So true. Not everything is in a book, and
or online.
You may not find the right book at the right moment when you need it.
Right.
And I do think, though, that asking for help is a bit vulnerable especially if you're trying to put on this idea that you're perfect and you know what you're doing, and then asking for help can be a bit vulnerable. And it's something that you and I have talked about in the past. So I wanted to touch on the topic of vulnerability as a strength, because years ago you introduced me to Brene Brown, who I love. And for those who don't know her, she's a researcher first and a storyteller.
Yeah.
She has spent decades studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. And one of the things I learned through Brene Brown is she discovered in her research that vulnerability is actually a connector, not a weakness. Could you talk about that concept and how you utilize this in your leadership style?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of back to what I said earlier. It's also being transparent, right? So when you're being transparent, maybe with with a big picture business conversation, talking about the why. I mean, all of these things aren't really unique ideas, right? It's a different way to frame it. But I think being vulnerable means being honest and having some built-in trust. I think Brene talks about trust a lot. And being kind is being honest. And all of those things work really, really well at work, right? And so for me, I think it's back to assuming that people are doing the best they can every day with whatever's happening, and coming at conversations, meetings, whatever's going on, knowing that, trusting that, and then being honest and forthcoming about whatever it is that we're addressing, dealing with, whatever we're working, maybe we're working on a project together, whatever that is. So I think that just gives you a really strong foundation. um I think for me it shows up in easy examples recently if I don't have the answer, right? I mean, I'm a fairly recent COO of a company. I just told you I didn't go to business school. So yeah, there's some vulnerability where I have to sometimes be like, okay, explain this to me. These are my questions, right? But it's not hiding under, back to what we said. I'm not being insecure, right? I'm trusting that I don't have to be the doer and that I don't have to know all the things. But I can be that way because I have trust with the people I work with, in that, I know that they've got me too, from that regard, or from
Yeah.
that perspective. Yeah. It's not easy. And I think that's why Brene talks about it, or talked about it, when she kind of brought up that idea back in the day. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work, a lot of quieting some self-talk, right? Where you're like, oh, what are people going to say if I don't know? Or if somebody else doesn't know and you don't want to call them out. It's something you have to work on constantly. And it's not, I don't think, to the people that are super successful long term in the professional corporate world, that it is an easy default, right? We literally have to be like, okay, I need to unlearn some things and then be conscious about that approach. Everyone's doing the best they can. It's okay to explain all of the reasons why, or that I don't know something. And it's okay if they don't know something, right? It's almost like that psychological safety. Same idea.
Absolutely. And I do think the idea of vulnerability being a connector, I think when you see someone who's willing to open up and share with you,
Yeah.
it makes you more willing to do that. Because
Mhm.
yes, it's nice to see someone who's perfect, but you don't necessarily connect with them and have that kind of feeling that you could work together in the same way if you're just working with someone who's always perfect. So
Yeah.
I think it's also interesting, when Brene first discovered this vulnerability kept coming up, that she tried to research all different ways around the fact that vulnerability being such a positive piece, she did not like that answer at the beginning, and she fought it quite a bit, but the research did come out. And so I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
I want to switch over to parenthood
Mm.
and the workplace,
Mhm.
because we've talked about new parents facing a number of challenges when they come back to
Mhm.
work after having a baby. And I don't just mean moms, I mean
Yeah.
dads as well. There are dads who
Yep.
want to be involved with their children.
Mhm.
And what advice do you have for new
Mm.
parents? And what advice do you have for colleagues of new parents?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I talk about this again quite often on other interviews because I mean, I'm a mom, right? And I came up in this industry. On the like in a hotel on the hotel side, and so I've seen the scheduling, and anyway, so I've been impacted, I think, on both sides. So it's a topic that I think is always front of mind for me as I try to think about how is our industry going to evolve. So my advice to new parents really is around being intentional and communicative, both, and that goes for employer and employee. There's a lot of assumptions that get made when somebody goes on parental leave. I won't even say maternity at this point, right? Because there's spousal leave, etc. Um, they assume they don't want any more career growth. They assume they might want reduced hours. They assume they're not going to be available for an after hours event. All these assumptions kind of happen and nobody talks about them. And then on the flip side, the employee probably has assumptions or they don't know. I mean, parenting could be, the first time it's new and they don't know how they're going to feel. I mean, I can tell you how many conversations I've had with women, because they're the ones that are giving birth, who are like, oh, I'm coming right back. And then I'm like, well, I hear you, totally support that. But let's just see what happens, because you might have different feelings. And so I don't hold them to those feelings either way, right? I'm like, I get it, but I just try to be like, just give yourself some time because you don't know how you're going to feel. And it's probably going to change throughout your whole parenting journey of what that looks like. And so my big things are being intentional about people that are returning from leave. So as an employer, being intentional about having a conversation. What are the expectations? What are your goals? How often should we check in on this? And what's working and what's not working? And then on the employee, if you're on the employee side, same thing. Be intentional, be communicative, say, hey, I'm all in. Nothing's going to change. Okay, great. If it does change, let us know, right? Or, hey, I don't think this is going to work for how I'm going to be doing this. So what are my options? What can I do? Or how can we figure this out? I think those are the two things I think that get skipped a lot, is what is the intention, and then let's talk about it. Instead, there's all these assumptions made and things kind of get done, and then it's like, wait, like, did we ask them what they wanted?
People can get nervous to ask them, right?
Yes.
It's a little bit of a scary conversation.
Yes.
Should I ask
Yeah.
this? Should I not ask this? Is it appropriate to ask this? But
yeah.
the other option is just assume what they want, right?
Right. But
So,
I think back to your vulnerability and being a good employer, and you can I mean, I love people that talk about life work balance but won't talk about this. So it's like you can't, this is part of that, and so I really feel like the intention and communication and not assuming anything gets us a lot farther until we can make even bigger changes. But I think that alone gets people at least engaged around, hey, it's not a dead end. Hey, not everything stops because of that. And that's the big thing, because we miss people when everything kind of stops or they get ignored because we don't want to have that conversation.
imagine that communication being a great way forward.
I know, right? Can we just talk about it? But that requires time, right? Vulnerability.
All the things.
All the things that nobody seems to have, but we're trying.
One of our favorite questions on our podcast is, what advice would you give to your younger self? And I'm curious, what would you say to 22-year-old Liz? What would you want her to know?
I would say it's okay to slow down. And I don't mean like not in pursuit of what your goals and things, but slow down as in it's okay to stop and talk to people and not be so results based. I was very business focused, businessy, or, for which I, of course, at the time probably thought I was being professional and, a top performer and all those things. But I think I wish I would have slowed down a little and got to know some people along the way, and kind of back to that influence authority piece. But just invested more in my people relationships instead of being so focused on my performance or my team's performance or the results. And so, it probably would have benefited me to just slow my roll a smidge and said, "Hey, what do get to know the people that I was working with." I think I see the value in that now, and I kick myself a little bit because back in the day I probably would have been my performance probably would have been even better, honestly, and then B, I would have probably had a better time.
We have such incredible people in this industry, and you get to form such great
Yeah.
friendships. I completely agree with you. I thought I was just doing my work and
Yeah.
completely missed how important to slow
Yeah.
down and build relationships with people would be.
Yeah.
So I love that advice.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
it sounds, it sounds, I think, a little, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't awful. It just was one of those things where I was like, yeah, I could have slowed down. I could have looked up a minute. Yeah.
yeah, I love that. Well, Liz, we always have way more to talk about than the time,
I
and
know.
this time is no different. But I did want to ask if you have one final nugget of advice for our audience, knowing that the motto of our show is around empowering personal success. Is there one last piece of advice you'd like to offer?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would say, and I'm really speaking to those people that are, just starting maybe their professional careers in the hotel or hospitality industry is, and again, I see this a lot at our company as well, is people are very back to work-life balance focused, which again is not a bad thing at all. Um, Lots of boundaries, I talk about this a lot, and but I would say like looking beyond your role, being engaged outside, back to what I said, instead of focusing on your one little piece of this very complex puzzle, um, how can you contribute bigger? How can you, again, lack of, this is an older phrase, but going above and beyond is a real thing. It's being good at your job is amazing, but looking for ways to be curious outside of your role, to impact others outside of your role, being a team player, those key things I don't think have changed. And I think they are totally possible, and you can still have boundaries. You can still get more money for more work. Like those things are not exclusive. Those are not two things that are mutually exclusive. I really would love to see people be comfortable saying, I'm going to do my job well. Here's other things I'm interested in. How can I learn about that? How can I sit in on the meeting? Right. I mean, that's what I did. And it's not about paying your dues. I hear that sometimes, and I'm like, no, no, no. But it's about if you put yourself in those situations and expose yourself to something bigger than what you know, there's going to be more opportunity for you. And I don't see that as ooh, that's past, I'm not being compensated for that. And ooh, I only work these many hours. I'm not saying, go crazy, but just be open to something bigger than that. That's, you know, I just think that's really key, and it's really lacking because I think we've gone so far the other way, which again I fully support. I was a working mom for many, like I get it. But I think there is a way to do it, and again, being intentional and communicative to the people you're working with about, hey, I'm interested in something, or I think I can contribute to that because of XYZ. Could I participate? Um, get your head up, look around and see where you can have impact. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, is I want people that are engaged and want to make a difference and have ideas. If you do those things, there's no stopping you.
I love that. I love looking around, looking for opportunities, but also asking for them.
Yeah.
Knowing that your role can be bigger if you're curious and you ask for more
Yeah.
exposure and more opportunity to do things. Well, that is
Yeah.
fabulous advice to end on. Thank you so much, Liz, for coming
Aw.
on. I know we want to do this for a while, and I'm so pleased we were able to record today. So thank you so much for being a guest
Yeah.
advisor on our show.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
It's a pleasure. And for our audience, if you would like to see more wonderful interviews with hospitality leaders like Liz, I hope you'll go to our website. It's personalstories.com, where you can find many more